Live
And we're
here in
recording.
Lake Norman. Cheers, man. This is our inaugural podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Millerpreneur meets whole 9 yards going for the extra one. We're going off the cuff today. Just talk a little bit about entrepreneurship. Just give me some life lessons, and I'll be full disclosure. 26 years old, financial advisor, fellow entrepreneur. I don't have my shit figured out. Tom, I don't know. I can't speak for you, but we're all along for the ride together. So let's talk.
Yeah, man. I can't say that I figured it all out, and anybody who tells you they have is full of shit. You kind of build, you get to the next level, you think you got it, and then you go, oh shit, the things I didn't know.
What did I get myself into, right?
Yeah.
So Tom, tell us, Tom and I, a little bit about Tom and I. So we connected about 4 years ago here in Huntersville, North Carolina. I'm actually a Connecticut native. Moved down to the North Carolina region in September of 2014. Tom, I know you're from upstate New York originally.
No, Long Island actually.
Long Island. Tell us a little bit about what you do down here, Tom.
So we build houses, we remodel. Business started out in New York in '07, right into the crash, and we went through that. Got down here in '11. We're doing whatever we could just to get by. 2013, we officially just did remodels and additions, so I consider that our actual start to the company down here. So we've been in business about 5 years now, and seen exponential growth over the last couple of years. Now it's time to give back a little. We're figuring out, how to give back to the construction community and what we're missing. That's part of this podcast and what we're trying to accomplish here today.
Fantastic. So Tom approached me a couple weeks ago at the Lake Norman Young Professionals. I am the president of Lake Norman Young Professionals here in Lake Norman, North Carolina. Beautiful, beautiful area to live. I would say definitely a booming environment. I think we're at just under 900,000 people in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg area. Forecasts call for 1.25 million by 2025. We're already seeing the congestion and the growth and the expansion. It's just a beautiful place to live and adapt, really, and from all types of segments and demographics and people. So Tom, approached me a couple weeks ago and said, hey, I want to get this podcast going, talk a little bit about, his experiences, my experiences, and, being a millennial, quote unquote, or I prefer young professional in this environment, share some of the stories and, successes, but more so for me personally, failures that have propelled me to be where I am today, and give back in that aspect. We really don't know where this is going to go, ladies and gents. This is our inaugural podcast, and we're just going to go off the cuff and talk life. So, Tom, I know that you've mentioned something a little bit about traditional, pitfalls of success in life and this illusion that we're painted growing up of what we're supposed to be doing, how that looks like, and where we're supposed to be. Elaborate on that a little bit for me.
Yeah, so one of my biggest gripes is that the line we were sold, throughout high school was go to school, get a job, get an education, get out. There'll be a six-figure job waiting for you. I can tell you that's all bullshit. There might be a few of them out there that'll get six figures. You might get a couple guys from Harvard. There's a lot more that's gone into that. The reality is, you're gonna get out probably with six figures in debt. Take a $30,000-$40,000 a year job. That'll grow to 60, 70 within a few years. Late 20s, early 30s, you'll be making that. And then, we'll follow the cycle of life, a lot of us, and have the wife and the kids.
The rat race, if you so will.
Yeah, exactly. So our big thing is, and that's why I got with Rich on it, this industry, construction, is struggling. We've done it to ourselves as far as labor force goes. The 90s, we hired a lot of illegal immigrants, low-cost labor, drove a lot of the skilled trade out of here. Made it through that point, hit '07, '08. That pushed the last of the true tradesmen out. I know plenty of electricians and plumbers. They've gone to be nurses and other skilled professions with a little more security.
Would you not consider those other types of trades, if you so will, though?
Yes and no. I'm using the word trade, defining it strictly as in the construction industry.
So
Um,
carpentry,
yep.
remodeling.
But all those people too, to your point, are moving into a position that is going to be the same financial demographic of that 50, 60,000, 70,000 a year demographic. Middle class, middle earning income.
Hmm.
Maybe the two of you are earning both of that, so you have a very good income coming in. Um,
How would you define very good income?
by national standards of,
Hmm.
if you're making over six figures, you're in the what, 2%?
I think 1% actually.
1%?
1% of Americans make six figures, and to be honest, I'm gonna interject a little bit for me. That just boggles my mind. When I was in college, more particularly, I think back to when I was a junior, senior. I graduated with a degree in business management operations, particularly skilled on the productions operations side, service management, a lot of corporate finance. I had a very broad education, fantastic education, to be quite honest with you. I take a lot more out of it now than I thought I would then. But really, what I found was that those were inspirational keys to doors that the onus would fall on me to go on and make happen.
Right.
Here's your degree. Thanks for your 4 years. If you want to continue education, go ahead, sign up for a couple more notes, take on a little bit more debt, and really that wasn't appealing to me because I didn't know what else the world had to offer. You know, so for me, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I ended up living at home for another year. I worked 3 jobs. I have a history in the sports industry, particularly the tennis industry. And I was riding out that wave. Had a fantastic opportunity out of school to, work at an academy. Picked up a coaching job, and the whole corporate 9 to 5 wasn't all that appealing to me. When I was growing up, yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Coming from I'm a first generation American. My parents are both immigrants. Okay, blue collar workers. My sister's a doctor. I'm a financial advisor now. We obviously are exceeding, and finding ourselves in those expectations that, you desire, your parents desire for you to fall into. But seeing what the economy looked like growing up, I grew up in a manufacturing town, manufacturing city. We're the hardware capital of the world. I was 6, 7 years old, and I was seeing all these buildings closing and becoming demolished while I was on the way down to the YMCA in the morning. And I said I didn't really understand it then. But then when I got to college, one of the first courses I took, I still remember like yesterday, it was marketing 101, and it was the positive effects of globalization. I didn't really understand what globalization was then, but then I came to realize I was witnessing that growing up. And let's fast forward 4 years later, I find myself at this transition. Do I go and get my MBA, or do I go out into the workforce? If I'm going to go into the workforce, what do I want to look into? What kind of jobs are available to me in the local community that I was moving back to. I went to college in Worcester, Mass, and was moving back to Central Connecticut. I could either work in Hartford for the insurance companies, or try to find myself a job for maybe a small firm, or the world was my oyster, right? So that all being said, I find myself where I'm at now, and still not making those six figures. But for me, those six figures just it wasn't appealing. It was appealing, but I didn't realize how little people actually accomplish that swinging out of the gates, and what the feasibility of that actually is throughout the course of your lifetime. And that's kind of where I stand with a lot of that.
Well, a couple points. Like you, I went to school. I thought I knew what I wanted to do, like many of us going into a 4-year degree. Some go for liberal arts their first 2 years, but a lot know, okay, I think I want to do this. I went to NYIT, New York Institute of Technology, prestigious school. Did the thing. What you were told to do. Go to a 4-year name brand school. Got into about my second year, and my professor asked me for a ride to the train station. Well, he didn't ask me for a ride to the train station just because the train was convenient in
Mm-hmm.
Long Island. He asked me for a ride to the train station because he couldn't afford the cab fare to get to the train station. Meanwhile, he's teaching, and he's also a licensed architect in the state of New York.
Mm-hmm.
When I put all that together, I said, this guy is not only teaching, but he's also an architect, and he can't even afford cab fare. That
Right.
doesn't add up to me. So I went back into the trades themselves, and like many of us, I didn't want to disappoint my parents, so I kept doing the school thing on the side and went to a community college, said, oh, maybe I'll finish a 2-year degree. Um, it's hard at that age. Remembering back, it's hard to tell people no, tell important figures in your life no. This is what I'm going to do. Confidently take that step forward.
Right.
So I think anybody coming out of high school, I'd give them the advice of have the confidence to have an intellectual conversation, an educated conversation with the people that are giving you advice in your life, which is probably your parents, probably your teachers.
So you're highlighting the importance of mentorship and finding good mentors.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the first crucial step to setting yourself up for a successful life for the rest of your life is having that confidence. Yeah. It's hard.
So is that hard. I think that's where Tom and I find ourselves coming in right now to be, to be a source of knowledge and be those mentors to you all out there. We, like I said, we don't all have it figured out. We're all in the process of trying to figure it out. And I kind of went off tangent earlier, but the point I was trying to make is, I fast forward 4 years, I almost went to grad school, and I was looking at the curriculum, and one of the first courses was, the negative impact of globalization. But rewind 4 years prior to that, I was learning about the positive effects of globalization. So, which one is it? But I think that in life, it's a continuous cycle of trial and error, and, figuring out along the way. So I think one of the points we're trying to highlight with what we're trying to accomplish here is to help you understand what those obstacles might be on the forefront and just have open talk about what some solutions might be. How can we help inspire to teach and to grow other individuals through what we've, learned in the workforce and through our own personal experiences. So.
Yeah, I think we grew up, and I may be ignorant in saying this because as we develop, we learn more and more about how ignorant we really are.
Yeah.
But I think we're in very volatile times. But I think that's based on the concept that, everything doubles and it doubles and it doubles. So what our parents went through at a doubling speed is not even close to the rate that we are doubling in speed. So you're not going to have the 30-year career anymore. That's been clearly established in the gold watch. But what does the future look like? What is that comfort zone? And a big thing for me, talking with Rich is being able to help people understand how to take that real middle class job and be very comfortable, very successful, very secure.
Right.
That's important to me. As an employer of 3 employees, I want my employees to be able to say, you know what, I've had it, I've had enough, I'm walking away. Not because of anything I did, but because they're going through the next phase of their life. Not going, hey, I have to grind and be miserable, for the next 20 years because I have a wife and a kid I got to support. And I think that all stems back to, how do you teach that? It's not taught in schools.
And to tap into that a little bit there, I think it's really important to address connotations. And 2 connotations I want to address. First and foremost, in the beginning, I mentioned myself and Tom being quote-unquote millennials. I hate having to even say quote-unquote millennials because the general population doesn't, it comes with a stigma. So I prefer utilizing the language young professionals, And the other is middle class. Okay, middle class doesn't have a negative connotation to it in my mind. It's creating a livable, feasible, and realistic lifestyle for yourself that detaches you from, the essence of failure, because we've put these ideologies on the pedestal that if we don't reach them, then we're a failure. We're middle class, we're not of equal caliber to people in, a different demographic. But going back to what you said in the very beginning, realistically, 6 figures has been the norm of ideology, right? And that's 1% of the population has that.
Well, and it's been a benchmark. And why is that a benchmark? Now that I've been in the workforce, I've been starting to make a very stable income, being an entrepreneur for the last 10 years. I'm just starting to stabilize out, and it's nowhere near 6 figures. And I'm starting to realize,
it's after you pay your employees, you pay the overhead, the cost of goods, the labor. Your take-home pay at the end of the year as a business owner
is well under 6 figures. And frankly, I'm probably, if you add up all the hours I put in, under minimum wage. But that's not where I'm going. More, it's why is 6 figures, $100,000 our benchmark? Why are we using that number? What is that? Let's back into
The connotation
lifestyle.
of that.
Yeah, but one of the reasons why I'm attracted to Rich and I doing this together is Rich has a very free spirit, very open-minded lifestyle entrepreneur. Um, I think that's great for most people, and I think that he's defining that right now exactly what it should be. What I do, I don't recommend for anybody but about 7% of the population.
Where do you get that 7% from?
Basically, that is all done by hard research that I've found through the years of the types of people that are getting into the different businesses, starting them, their failures, their successes, how long it actually takes. Some believe it's gonna be faster as time is doubling and doubling and doubling. I don't believe that. I think 10 years to finally get a foothold in something is going to probably always be the norm. And I think honestly, the reason that is you're going to get experiences, and you may not own companies for more than 3 to 5 years. They may ramp up, and you may sell them off. They may close down. You move on to the next thing because everything moves so fast. But to get the actual experience is 10 years. And if you add that up, that's that rule of thousands of hours to become an expert.
Right.
So I don't recommend it for most people. The instability.
Let's dive a little bit deeper into why, and I agree with you on that. I don't recommend this lifestyle for everybody. I mean, I sat down with an industry leader in the sports industry several years ago, addressing some issues that I had personally been experiencing in the place of business I was at the time, and how I felt choke held. Every idea I came up with, it was heard but not really digested, and ultimately it kills the spirit of drive, and of will. And if you're constantly hitting that brick wall, then shit, what's the point, right?
Exactly.
Anyways, this individual in particular, he said to me, he says, Rich, you got to figure out what makes people tick. And for my time in the industry, and for my life experiences, this guy's name is Mike Barrow. All right, he's been a pioneer in the 10 and under junior tennis scene globally, very well respected. And I had the opportunity to pick his brains for a couple minutes. And he said, Rich, there's 3 things that make people tick, and that's money, ease of life, or respect. It could be 1, 2, 3, all 3 of those, or some conglomeration or pattern of the 3. So I think ultimately what Tom and I are trying to dig down into is helping ourselves continue our progress moving forward, but also inspire others to see what makes you tick. And if it's the ease of life and it's the comfort of the 9 to 5, well, that's okay for you. Okay. For individuals like ourselves, listen, we're not trying to become multimillionaires. I mean, it'd be great if we were, but what does that mean to us? We want to ultimately live a lifestyle that's appealing, to us. And I think that's financial freedom, the ability to have discretionary, disposable income, a sustainable business, and with that comes an intrinsic respect for ourselves and from our peers. But it's not limited to a sole definition. Okay, I think ultimately it comes down to how people idealize their own life, and that could be within the constraints and capacities of the illusion of what society's painted us to believe, or it could be your own paradigm, one or the other. But it's okay to have one or the other. But what we're addressing is the paradigm outside of the box, right?
Well, and I think we've become a society where there are no more boxes. You shouldn't have boxes. As much as people want to say millennials are lazy, this, that, and the other, reality is that every generation has had every issue that they want to paint these pictures. In my eyes, it all stems back to Maslow's theory of hierarchy and in the 7 stages. And I think millennials are realizing, hey, the first few stages are the important ones. Well, I read an article the other day. Why do we eat meat? Well, because cavemen knew in the short growing season back then, during that period of time, they could not grow enough calories in order to sustain themselves. So that's why they hunted and ate meat.
Adaptation.
Right. And what does that stem back to? They were there for survival and comfort and living their lives. And I think we're getting back to that style. We don't need the excessive things. I think overall, I want to help my employees get to that level where they meet the first few thresholds comfortably all the time. And that's what my company needs to thrive and sustain. One of the passions, I've always said I want a 200-acre estate. And as I grow, I realize more and more what that really is. That is not a 200-acre estate for me to enjoy. That's not a 200-acre estate for my family to enjoy, because the reality is my family won't probably come down and visit more than once every few years. That is there for me to provide to my employees a sanctuary to go to that they're entitled to for 1 week. I'm using that word entitled on purpose because people say millennials always feel entitled. I don't think it's an entitlement. I think it is, as an owner, a respect towards the people that work for you and giving back and sharing with them for their hard efforts.
Absolutely. Ultimately, regardless of the business you're in, okay, you're in business to stay in business. And we can't refrain from the fact that you have to earn revenue. You have to have revenue on the books to stay in business.
Yeah, profit, not just revenue. Listen, I can have $1 million in revenue, but I can have $2 million in expenses.
Right. So ultimately, especially from a managerial standpoint, because you're no longer in business by yourself, you're in business with others. And you rely heavily on those participants, those employees, to go out and service your clients. And ultimately, that's going to generate, that's going to generate the revenue, that's going to generate the profits, that's going to generate the growth. So it's this psychological implementation of, hey, I respect you. You're helping this company thrive, and that doesn't entitle you to this, but in a way, it opens up the door to to gratitude. And I think gratitude is the one of the keys to happiness. Being grateful, because you don't want to come in, clock out, and say, I hate my job.
Yeah.
Right? And ultimately, that's going to affect your work ethic, right? And I think this is a great segue into instilling ambition in others, is what we're looking to do through company culture, and how the way company culture has evolutionized in the corporate sector. I'm using connotations, because we can understand these, but I mean, small businesses, mom and pop shops still could have piss poor company culture as well. So I'm not just going to knock on the corporate side. Okay, let's just call it the entity, the organization as a whole, the organizational culture. Let's talk about organizational culture and the structure, and how you see what you do with your employees now, and how that pays dividends to your company.
Yeah. So it's funny you say that, because my superintendent and I, we go through some times where he came on in December. Some of the most stressful things we're doing, like just being behind. I'll go out and bang nails. He's going out and banging nails. He was not hired to go out and bang nails. Then there's a ripple effect. Then he's behind on his actual job work, so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, the two, like, he started it in the saying, I'm having fun. And at the end of the day, are we having fun? Yeah, we're having fun. So we're getting through it. And are we working to get better so we don't have this going on? So that's culture. I mean, to me, it's the essence and the core of culture. And how do I cultivate that? And frankly, I don't know. I've been trying to figure it out. I've got a guy that works for me for 25. He's 25. He's been with me 3.5 years, and he's stuck with me 3.5 years. I post stuff on Facebook, like, he said the other day, when I asked him, when do you want to stop today? It's a Saturday. He's out there working with me, knowing we got to get a job done. He goes, when the job's done. I mean, I don't know how I managed to get him.
Do you think that could be taught, or is that something one carries intrinsically, or is it a combination of the two, between being felt appreciated in what you do and the desire in doing what you do?
I wish I knew, and I'm trying to figure it out, because I'm trying to bottle that up. bottle it.
Scale it, sell
Yeah.
it. That's the $1 million question, right?
Yeah.
Folks?
I wish I could figure this out because he's been with me 3.5 years. An awesome employee. He'd be hard to replace. I'm trying to steal him away from racing full time. What does he need to get away from racing full time?
Yeah.
Well, he loves racing. I mean, he loves NASCAR, loves racing, loves being on the pit crew.
So would you not say it might be counterintuitive to take him away from racing? Because it's an integral part of his life as a whole. And in doing so, that is it's the sum of which makes that person. Because we fall into this whole concept, people told me, especially in the financial industry that I work in, there's no work-life balance. It's work-life integration, right? So for me, being a young professional, millennial, right? What's important to me is to have the flexibility and the freedom. I don't like feeling constrained. Okay, I run from constrainment because it's a chokehold on me and my personality. Describe me as a free bird. Multiple people have said that, but it's how I live my life. So at the moment of constrainment, I start looking for other opportunity. So is it more, are you trying to maximize or increase the said individual's productivity, or are we trying to cultivate and replicate with others what he does without taking away his personality, his personal life?
Right. So that's a great question. And I've tried to figure out, so how do you allow that without letting the prisoners run the ward? And
prisoners running the ward.
Yeah. So what I mean by that is, so he takes off periodically on Fridays and leaves out. So I only get 4 days of production instead of 5.
Okay.
Okay, fine. I can work around that. The scale we're at now. As we scale up, and you've got 5 or 6 people that want to take off random days and want to do random stuff and this, that, and the other. How do you scale that? I don't know. And the one thing I have realized, I'm going to segue out of this for a second here, is that worrying about that at the very moment is a waste of worry. And what I mean by that is every time I've tried to figure out a problem before it happens, it's never been the solution anyway.
Okay.
So you got to let the problem happen, meaning hire somebody else on and see what happens company culture-wise. I think I've cultivated a company culture where guys, and this is the exact company culture that I want, and I've used this example. When Jimmy's daughter has a recital on Tuesday afternoon at 4 o'clock, Jimmy is leaving at 2 o'clock and showering, and everybody else is busting their ass to pick up for the 4 hours that Jimmy isn't at work, because they know when it's important to go to something for their kids, everybody else is going to rally around them. And that's the company culture I want to cultivate. So to your point, yes, I think you have to allow people to have their outside extracurricular activities, and they're going to interfere with business, and production is going to slack because of it. But one of my biggest fears as an employer is, oh wait, I went through it, I lived it, I understand it.
The 2008 financial crisis.
Right. However, I think with the right company culture, I cannot lay anybody off, and we can actually go through and grow in 08.
No, you're right. And I revert back to stories. I've got two quick stories to tell. One of which is a very, I hate using filler words, so I'm gonna remove that. But in my eyes, a successful individual. I got to know him through one of the businesses that I was involved in. Fantastic father figure. Has cultivated a great home life for his children. Not only did we do business, but I became part of the family. Okay, so I got a little bit closer of a look in terms of what the fiber looks inside of the construct of the home. And he runs a successful business in some sort of, this is not my cup of tea, my niche, but some sort of IT software
tech company.
Tech, but I forget exactly. Hold on a second. It's a do this. I'm thinking right now. It's weird. I do this sometimes.
While you think, I actually am going to make a statement that I had
Yeah.
in my mind. Is sometimes I feel like I ramble on.
Yeah.
And I hope that people can digest what I'm rambling about because there's so much going on.
Cybersecurity. That's what it was. Cybersecurity. See, that's multiple syllables right there. That's hard for my little brain to comprehend. But cybersecurity. Anyways, far beyond my scope of knowledge. Point is, he said to me, he sat down, and we were having a discussion about employees in the workforce and corporate social responsibility, if you so will, and relating back to 2008. He sat down with his team and he says, hey, either we sit down and we go through a series of layoffs, we ride out the storm, and then people come back in, or everyone around this table, including himself, takes a 50% cut and we all stay in business. I think that is just exceptional from a leadership standpoint, because you're not only requesting that these other individuals take a pay cut, but you're the leader. You're on the forefront of that. You're the hitman. You're the front man. Sorry, and you're also diving into that as well. I have a tremendous amount of respect for that, and that allowed them to get through 2008, and now they're continuously growing and running a multi-million-dollar organization. And another story quickly to touch back on. I'll tie in the two. But I was getting my oil serviced a couple of weeks ago at a dealership, and I'm sitting there in the waiting room drinking my coffee, and there's a gentleman who is a service provider at the shop, and he goes in and he's talking to the shop manager, and he says, hey, in a very humble persona, I'm getting married next year, we're planning our honeymoon, and this is a year out. And he goes into this, he's trying to sell his manager on, hey, can I basically take off a week for my honeymoon? To me, to you, it's, yeah, go for it.
Right.
This is a life event. This is hopefully a once in a lifetime event for you. If not, you figure it out it'll work out in the next one. But anyways, that's besides the point. But I'm just sitting there thinking, to me, it's crazy to think, because I don't get PTO with what I do. If I've got to get something done, or if I've got a life event or something else coming up, I'm taking the day off. I will attend to my duties and make sure everything else gets handled, but getting paid time off, especially requesting that a year from now, it just boggles my mind. And it might be that entitled millennial in me, but it's so important for an individual like myself to have that flexibility and that freedom, because honestly, life comes first for me, work is second, but you can't really have one without the other.
So let me ask you, because this is always something I've been challenged on, and right now we're in a position where nobody's got PTO. In construction, it's not normal to have PTO.
Mm-hmm.
My superintendent, he's like, hey, my grandson races on, I think it's Wednesdays at 4 o'clock, and I showed up at like 2:30 one day to make sure his ass was on the road by 3, and he didn't realize why I showed up on the job site. He thought I showed up just to check in. I was like, no, I'm here to make sure you get the fuck out of here, because I knew you had to be there over in Concord by 4. I said, so I was just coming over to relieve you. But like I'm fearful of saying you can have as much time off as you want.
Right, because you get people in an inch, they take them off.
Exactly. So I'm fearful of, like, listen, I'll put you all on salary, and I really don't care. At the end of the day, as long as the job's getting done,
Mm-hmm.
if you take off 4 hours here to go take your son to a dentist appointment and so on and so forth.
Well, let me play devil's advocate with you real quickly. So earlier you mentioned how you've thought of these problems, and the solution you've come up with isn't the solution when the problem actually occurs.
Right.
So why not integrate that same concept here? Because it seems like your worry is ultimately this is going to have a trickle effect, and you might potentially build this culture where it's acceptable to just say, hey, I'll get it done when I get it done. But why not hammer the nail when it sticks out?
So
or have you been burned?
So I haven't been burned. In employing people, my fear is, frankly, the government.
Okay. The red, white, and blue folks.
Well, no, I mean...
Speaking of government, I gotta do my taxes.
No, I mean, you think about it, and North Carolina is not as bad as New York. But I grew up in New York, so it's unfortunately ingrained in me. It's the big book of no. Employees have the employer by the balls. North Carolina is an at-will state, so you
Yeah.
can get rid of people.
Employment at will. No probable cause, one way or the other, from either party.
Yep. My thing is that, at what point am I inviting a wrongful termination suit? I got to worry about everybody else now. This isn't between me and that employer. This is or employee. This is between me, the employee, and everybody else in the company that I got to protect. Because frankly, about a year ago, I posted in Facebook 8 different jobs we were working on, and when you added up all the people that were working and then their families, we affected over 200 people a day because of their families and everything they're supporting. That's like a heavy burden that keeps me up at night sometimes. How do you cultivate or get people to go, hey, I'm going to take this day off, but I know that I can decipher between important text message, non-important text message I can ignore.
Prioritization.
Yeah. Because in my eyes, especially someone office staff, whatever, if we can work with them that they're working from home, they're, going on vacation, but they know that they got to check their email a couple times a day, whatever.
Right.
Without writing a big book of every scenario.
Mm-hmm.
What's your thoughts on that? Because obviously you experience that and that you don't get PTO. But if you're going to take a day off, you take it off. It doesn't matter. But you eat what you kill, too.
I was just going to say, you eat what you kill. And I think ultimately the self-accountability comes into play. Because listen to what you just said there. You said that you carry the burden of yourself, your significant other, and sorry guys, I get a little distracted. We actually have a tornado watch going on right now here in Huntersville. Some brutal thunderstorms coming through, and it just cracked a whip outside. But anyways, you said you carry the burden of yourself, your significant other, your employees. Okay, this whole
their families,
their families, this whole trickle down, this whole multiplier effect, if you will, from an economic standpoint.
Right.
Well, how far is it fair for you to carry that full burden? Because I know personally right now, my only responsibility is to myself. I am not married. I do not have a significant other. I pay my, I'm responsible for my bills. Okay, they're marginal. I don't live an extravagant lifestyle. I don't make the income to do so yet. but ultimately, if I did though, because I know now that I'm older, I see what my parents did for my sister and I and for the family. And I see what other families have done for theirs through conversation, through clients and experiences. So I don't think it's fully fair for you to carry 100% of the burden. It's really important that you go back to the old adage, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Right.
And you and I are the kind of people that, and there's a contrary to it too. There's people that say, okay, you can't lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, but they drain the fucking pond once you get there. You know what I mean? And to the contrary to that, we're people that lead the horse to water, but we're going to fill it up even higher so you don't have to stretch your neck down so far and hurt yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think we can dive a little bit deeper and think about this maybe for a further episode, but I respect that. But how much of that burden is true fair enough for you to carry on yourself? Because if you're put, you got to meet people halfway. If you're putting yours in and they're not, then
I'd love to say that, but reality, theory, like there's a lot of theory out there, and that's a lot of what you and I are going to contradict over the course of this podcast. Is theory and what people say should happen, but what really happens.
Right.
What really happens is you get in the dirt and you start digging. Gary Vee talks about the dirt in the sky all the time.
Right.
So I think honestly, truthfully, that's a limiting factor of mine, a limiting belief, if you will.
Okay.
I've got a fear of failure that's related now not only to myself, but also to employees. Like I used to be able to be reckless. Like if I failed, okay, I end up on somebody's couch. Now it's if I fail, I've got at least 20 people that are starving tomorrow. Look at their paychecks and whatever they've done, but they've got to go out and get a new job. In this economy, sure, they can go find work. '08 economy, they're not gonna.
Nope.
But it's cultivating that culture, doing the right thing. What is really the most important thing? And truthfully, last 2-3 weeks that I've been banging nails, not been doing the right thing. I need to be doing this podcast. I need to be doing marketing. I need to be doing everything to make sure the sales are rolling in.
Yeah.
For that.
And to add to the essence of that, you have to make sure these sales are coming in, but you have to make sure that you have the people to fulfill those orders.
Right. And another fear. You know, how much do I need to sell? Because reality is we're booked till June.
How quick can you scale? And how much can you scale?
Which becomes, where do I stop? What do I do? You know.
So let me ask you this, Tom. If there's a need for more employment, especially in the economy in the local area that we're in now. It's a thriving geographic area, to say the least. I mean, you can't go down a single back road. You know that when I've been here for almost 4 years. I go down back roads I used to drive down all the time. They're in full blown commercial development now.
Oh yeah, they skipped residential and went right to commercial.
Yep. So, is there a lack of skilled trade that you're feeling right now?
Oh, hands down. The whole entire country is feeling the lack of skilled trade.
So there's a topic we need to dive in a little bit deeper here. And why are we lacking this skilled trade? What is this a direct derivative of? Is this a derivative of, hey, you're graduating high school, you got to get into the top university, you got to get into a school, you got to get your college degree, and that's taking away individuals from going to trade school. And I could say I've had friends who went to college, they dropped out after the first semester, and they went out and did their own thing. You know, it's not like they went to trade school, but now that I think of it too, in the small community, not small community, it's a decently large community that I grew up in. Now that I think about it, the trade schools were slowly closing.
Yeah.
Slowly closing. So, is it something that we are trying to address to inspire others to pursue skilled trade now, as opposed to taking the route of going to a college university and getting that piece of paper? Because that strikes a chord in the paradigm of our society today, I think.
Yeah. Well, a couple things that I think as a whole, as a society, we sit there and go, you need to do this, you need to do that, and we try and box people like we were talking about earlier. You need to go in this box, and that box is 9 to 5, corporate, literally a cubicle, 4-year degree. 4-year degrees now become a high school degree.
That's true. Go back to school, take another $100,000 of debt, folks, and no disrespect to those that do.
Well, again, it's and we're gonna speak freely, and I'm sorry if you don't like unpolitically correct statements, but that's too bad.
Yeah.
You're
not. Tune out now, folks.
Yeah.
Tune out now, because you ain't gonna get that here.
No, I've got a liberal and a conservative mindset, and the reality is not everybody should fit in a box, and or society as a whole has tried to box people up and say, hey, here's your 4-year degree. Well, now we're going, oh shit, that was a bad idea. When we should have said, do what makes you happy. And the reality is that...
What if at that point in time that's what was making them happy, was pursuing this 4-year degree? I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Well, fine. But I'm telling you right now, I guarantee I would have never went to school at all. Wouldn't have wasted... I wasted about $40,000 with NYT, and I wasted another probably 10 grand. So I wasted about 50 grand in college education with no degree. I had enough credits to have a 4-year degree. I have no degree. And anything and everything that I've learned, I could have read it in a book on my own.
Yeah.
I read books, which, by the way, when I say I read, means audible. I listen to them, and if they're of quality, then I buy the book, and I use that cognitive dissonance of reading the book to digest everything.
Mm-hmm.
I think we would not be in the quagmire we are if people would
Giggity
stop.
goo!
If people would quit trying to manipulate the system for...
Who are these people? Who are these people?
Yeah, that's a great question because it's always who are these people, and there is no face to this, and it's like you can go
Or
conspiracy.
are we all a product of our own demise, fueling these concepts?
It's an interesting question. Um, and now that you ask that, that's kind of like parents always want their kids to do better than they did.
Mm-hmm.
So you go from the baby boomer generation who had the millennial generation who was we're going to go to war, we're going to come back, and the women went into the factory to support the war, and then after the war got out of the factory and the men came home from service and went back into the factories, then we had globalization.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a very interesting question of if we are a product of our own demise.
I think we are a product of our own demise, and I think the ultimate essence of what we're trying to accomplish here is to create that self-reliance, to inspire you to pursue, as cliche as it sounds, what makes you happy. And if you're not making 30, 40, $50,000 your first year out of college, well, shit, not a lot of people are. It's okay. It's okay. You have to continuously open doors for yourself, and we find ourselves suppressed in our own state because we have not felt like we've lived up to what we as a society have created we need to be at.
Yeah.
And growing up, I'll tell you, I said, man, I can't wait till I become older. Everybody I know just seems to have their shit figured out. But you know what? The more and more I learn, the more and more I see and I listen, you don't have it figured out. So this is a revolving conversation I have with a lot of my peers, and it's ultimately come down to the conclusion that life is it's a spinning cycle of having to figure out and adapt to the current situation. So I think the ultimate takeaway is say, hey, it's okay, and prepare yourself now with that mindset to be a quick change artist and adapt when those sequences or those occurrences happen, and learn from them.
Yeah.
Right.
And segueing back to what I was saying, we demonize trade schools and we demonize like that's not good for you. It's not good enough for you. I think that now that you mention it, we're a product of our own demise. But now I'm like, okay, what if we left everybody alone? Just be happy with who you are and what makes you feel good, and use that as your compass. And I'm gonna also
So
say,
is it that ease of life, that respect, or that?
It's Maslow's theory of hierarchy. So I think we should respect the carpenter that comes into our house and is dirty and doing things that we don't want to do. But also, I'm gonna point out social media. Social media has created highlight reels, and everybody thinks that their life should be the highlight reel.
It's really interesting. We're about 48 minutes into this, and this is the first time two millennials have brought up social media. That's impressive. That's impressive. It is. But go ahead.
Well, where I want to go with that is that at the end of the day, social media is great, but you also have to take a deep look inside of yourself. Am I happy? And use that as your compass. That is your North Star.
Mm-hmm. The battle I face every day, and I just had a conversation with somebody a couple hours ago. I said, I'm not where I wanted to be for 26. I'm going to be 27 in July. But where did I picture myself? We can have this philosophical conversation, but I'm sorry, just continue. But yeah, no, I agree. I'll admit, I'm not happy with where I am in life.
Yeah, that is a entrepreneurial problem, and well, listen, I'm not where I want to be, and I will never be where I want to be because I'll never be there as fast as I want to be.
So say that again. You're not where you want to be because you didn't get there as fast as you wanted to be.
Right.
And that's what epitomizes, I guess, your definition of happy. Pursuing happiness, or
no. The thing is, you've got to look inside. You got to take a deep breath and just exhale and realize how great life is.
Pass it along.
No,
I know.
you know, if it doesn't matter, if it's not going to matter in 5 years, don't give it more than 5 minutes.
That's true. It's so true. Some of the problems I had several years ago, and I had this conversation actually with Paul. Shout out to Paul. He's one of the trifecta here, living up in New York now. But I said to him a couple months ago at a coffee shop, I said, if you have point A and point C, okay, it's where you are now, and it's where you are now and where you want to be, okay. Say if you're going through, a difficult time. If you know to a degree of certainty, based off past experience, or maybe not past experience, that it's going to be okay, that it's going to work out, is it worth spending all the time in between those phases, between point A and C, and integrating part B of anxiety, loss, loss of hope, and all of that? If we know that it's going to be all right, as you say, how can we, as difficult as it may be, take control of our mindset in that integral part, and live our life differently, because we know we're still going to end up at the same place?
See, I don't think you can, because humans are naturally emotional. And without emotion, if you're always at highs without a low, you'd never understand what the high is.
Yeah, we live a life of binaries. You wouldn't know what hot was without cold. You wouldn't know what green was without red.
Right.
Highs and lows. Same thing.
You've got to embrace that, though, and I've got to a point where I've embraced it. I can't quite control it, but I can embrace it, and it's evened my highs and lows out. The other thing, too, like, I'll give you an example. I'll look at Friday and go, oh, shit, I've got all this money I've got to pay out. So all week, my week sucks, just because I'm worried about what's going to happen on Friday, knowing that it's going to work out anyway.
Right.
Right, wrong, or indifferent. I haven't learned to control that yet. I don't know if people naturally do learn to control that. I'm listening to Ray Dalio's book right now, and he says you don't. Literally, he's talked to people who are extremely successful. You're never happy where you are. You always worry about something. You think you haven't gotten to where you want to be. But you need to learn to embrace that. And I've learned somewhat to embrace that. Like, I have a little bit of fun with it. It's a little bit of craziness, but it's fun.
I tell people I have it. I say chalk it up to the fuck it bucket, Chalk it up to the fuck it bucket. It is what it is. We all know and heard that saying before. And like you said, if it's 5 years from now, it ain't going to make a difference, then spend no more than 5 minutes on it.
Yeah. And one thing I think we should circle to is the fact that you and I, ultimately, what's our worst case scenario? Your worst case, my worst case, our parents' couch. Let's at least tip our hat to the people who don't have that support system.
Right.
And their worst case scenario is the streets. It is the bridge. I haven't been there. I haven't understood it yet. So I don't want to, if I haven't walked in their boots, I don't want to disrespect that. But they're treading their water. But the reality is they fail. They're going to the streets. It's something I'd like to understand how to help with. Because I know, like I said, at the end of the day, if I fail and fail miserably, I'm ending up on a couch. Whether it's my dad's couch, my mom's couch, or my girlfriend's parents' couch, I'm ending up on a couch somewhere. Like, that's my worst case.
Swallow your pride a little bit there, and we are emotional human beings. It can take people like you and I, especially too. I mean, we'll take an ego hit for it, but hell, man, we've taken ego hits. There's a lot that we're gonna dive into, a little bit more of our personal lives, guys. This is our pilot episode. I think we're gonna dive a little bit more into what it looks like to be an entrepreneur moving forward, or an intrapreneur, as Tom has coined here, an intrapreneur within your company, within the organization that you work with.
Well, and that's the people I want around me. I want them to. I would rather see an employee make it as an executive, confident decision and fail at it,
Mhm.
and it costs me some money personally, than them tiptoe around shit because they may find a better way of doing things. I don't have all the answers.
Mhm.
And I think that also falls into the respect category of why do people want to work in company culture? It's because they know if they gave it their all honestly,
Mhm.
and I've had employees too that have said, "Well, I tried my best," and you just can hear the unsincerity in it.
Mhm.
Um, that it's like, okay, well, you're full of shit, so no, you're gone. But somebody who says, "Dude, I tried this idea because I thought that if they can explain their thought process, then I respect that. I can say, fine, don't worry about it. You lost $50, $100, $1,000, whatever. No big deal.
Right.
We tried it. We failed. Don't do that again. You know,
Right.
because guess what? The next employee is going to do the same shit. But if you
Right.
do it and you're still in the company, well, you can explain to Jimmy that me, Johnny, did that 3 years ago. Didn't work out well.
Right.
So I think that's a testament to company culture. I think, but that's entrepreneur is what I'm trying to cultivate.
Mhm.
And I think that's a lot of what people should be as entrepreneurs.
Mhm.
Free spirited thinkers within a company, not within confines though either. They should be able to think about, if they're in marketing, they should be able to think about production.
Mhm.
And I think that helps with most people's mentality and lifestyle.
Absolutely. So I think ultimately what it comes down to too, I mean, it begs the question. Not ultimately comes down to, that's just filler talk right there, but I think it begs the question of taking apart of what you just said there. And it was, we tried it and it didn't succeed. So how do we find that degree, that happy medium, if you so will, between the leader of the organization saying, "Hey, I've gotten to where I've gotten because of what I've done and what I've learned, and this is why you should listen to me," but also allowing for that freedom of speech, if you so will. So it comes down to the leader as well. Now,
I think it does, and I think it comes down to a leader who can swallow their pride to tell an employee, "Yeah, you're right.
yeah.
At the end of the day, you're right. I'm sorry."
And I worked for an organization not too long ago. It's not going to be mentioned by name. And one of the pitfalls that I just couldn't get over was the lack of adaptation to current trends. Okay, and that came from the software integration, how we communicated, or how we had access to resources, and just a whole conglomerate. And I just ultimately said to myself, I said, this is an inefficient workforce. And we all know in the business world, inefficiencies
Cost money.
cost money and take away from productivity. And I said, I can no longer be a part of this. And that's why I had to make the moves that I did. And that, I bring that up because it goes hand in hand with this whole concept of adaptation, and it regurgitates back to what you were saying is we try to think of the problems and the solutions before they occur, but more so it's how can we potentially come up with solution A, B, and C to potential problem, pillar one, right?
Right.
So all in all, guys, we appreciate you coming out to Millipreneur. I'm a Millipreneur. Yes, that's millennial entrepreneur. It's a word that I've coined. Millipreneur means whole 9 yards, going for the extra one, guys. We're trying to bring some life advice your way, lifestyle entrepreneurship. This is our pilot podcast episode. Appreciate you tuning in, guys. Tom, any closing words?
No, I'm excited about it. Keep digging here. Bring value to everybody. Hopefully everybody understands what we're doing, and go from there with it.
And we're all trying to figure it out together, guys. We ain't got to figure it out, but we're here along the ride. So cheers.